So when you think of Robin Hood, what comes to mind?
Well, I saw the Errol Flynn, the Michael Curtiz version, when I was a child. Of course, Robin Hood became, a boyhood hero. And curious enough, when I was working at Universal, I was just finishing off Ghost Story, I think, and a number of producers came to me and said they were thinking of doing a remake at Universal of Robin Hood, which is back in 1981, I think, 81, 82. I said, but you can't possibly improve. You can't improve on Errol Flynn's version. Let's run it, and so we ran in one of the theatres on the lot, and invited the good and the great to watch it. And I said, come on, guys, why don't you just re-release it? It's a fabulous film. They all laughed, and it sort of died. Anyway, many years later, as you know, Sir Radcliffe asked me if I'd do a film. I think it was William Boyd's, one of his African novels, and the adaptation. I said, I'd be very happy to do it, yes. And we were preparing it, and I was having lots of meetings with Boyd, and it was all going very well. And so I've suddenly got this call from 20th Century Fox. They want to do Robin Hood, and it's greenlit, and they want to go immediately because they want to preempt the Kevin Costner version. And we've got to start shooting immediately. So I thought, well, it's winter, so that's a start. So it can't be Merry England with lots of, Sherwood Forest and the Green Man. Yeah, we'll have to think of another way we're going to do it. I said, yes, I'll do it. But show me a script first. Let's see what. And the script, I thought the script, frankly, was written by somebody who didn't know much about medieval England for a start, and sort of rollicking, sort of American. It wasn't good, let me put it that way, in my opinion. Anyway, so I said, yeah, I'll do it, but why don't let's do a quick rewrite if we can. And I suggested John McGrath, and because John was an eminent producer, playwright. John subscribed to the story of Robin Hood is very much a story which appealed to him and his politics. So we went ahead, and they liked the script, and didn't think they fully understand the implications of what they were signing up for. And off we went to make the film, and the question of casting and so forth and so forth. Anyway, that's how it started. That were the roots of it. But it became the urgency was to make a film, get it into all the theatres globally through Fox before the Kevin Costner film came out, and it would be shown in America on their network, television network, on their cable network, and that's what we agreed to do. So.
And I guess was it a smooth production, or was it one that came with its unique challenges? Because sort of making a Robin Hood film is obviously no small thing.
I found on location search. First of all, I found a Victorian castle, which was built in the medieval fashion, a sort of Gothic sort of homage. And it was, so I said, well, we know when Robin Hood was being, when we set it in the Middle Ages, they were building castles. So I said, let's take this Victorian castle, surround it with scaffolding, and make it look like work in progress. And I said, all the trees are bare, so they can't hide in the trees and ambush, the sheriff of Nottingham's people. So where can we hide, this band of outlaws? And quite serendipitously, we found in Cheshire, near this castle, a whole warren of salt mines.
Right.
And I thought, this is perfect. I mean, this is, it really means underground. But the outlaws underground in the salt mines, in these salt mines in Cheshire. So I had two perfect locations. So I was feeling pretty happy about all of that. But the production was tricky. It was cold, it was wet, and we had a problem, you may have heard, with our leading man, but who had chronic colitis, and he was so ill that we had to use doubles a lot of the time, and we couldn't let the studio know because he hadn't declared his problem on his insurance form, so we had to keep that really quiet. Now we had a brilliant lookalike stand-in stuntman. Unfortunately, when he was making his great escape, and he leaps from the ramparts onto the scaffolding, we were supposed to do it in 3 stages. The scaffolding from the top of the ramparts down to the ground, and the special effects people miscalculated. And the fight sort of proceeded to the top of the scaffolding, and then it crashed all the way. I mean, and it crashed just as the BBC's film show, and the Norman's film, I forget what it was called, was arriving, and then this huge sort of scream, and all the scaffolding crashed to the ground. And luckily no one was killed, but 3 of the stuntmen were injured, taken off. And unhappily, the stuntman who was representing Bergin was one of the ones that didn't come back. I mean, he was injured, but he wasn't injured for life. I mean, he didn't have to amputate anything, but he was serious. And it was obviously a problem, cutting around him. I mean, I thought he did a terrific job, but he was ill. We had to conceal that a lot of the time. And the accident on the scaffolding was not helpful. It was a setback, but it just forces you to be genius. Having made a film that didn't have that's the problem. That's one of the joys of making films. I think is every day, no matter how many films you make, every one of them springs a surprise. Looking right and you get hit on the left. I mean, it just comes with the deal. That's part of the process.
And you mentioned obviously the sort of the Costner version of Robin Hood at the start. I guess sort of how aware were you of that? Because from what I've read online, obviously you were both kind of filming at the same time and then sort of released just sort of 2 months apart in the UK at least. So did it kind of feel like you were in direct competition?
Tried to cast their maid Marian.
Right.
After the we're shooting, they were still trying to find their maid Marian. They had started shooting, but they hadn't cast her. I'd cast Uma. They'd seen Uma, but they hadn't gone for her. So I thought she was a perfect maid Marian. Also, we had to, perversely, probably had to pretend she was a boy for a time.
Right.
And she runs away with the outlaws. Anyway, we cast her. They were obviously a bit behind, but we were quite cheeky. I know they were shooting in Dover, and I think on their first day of shooting, and we knew that they still hadn't cast Maid Marian. So when they broke for lunch, we arranged for one of those girls, I think in fishnet stockings, to arrive in their car park when they were at their lunch break, what they call something a grams.
Right.
Like you could get for parties and things. You could get a girl, in fishnet stockings, looking like a bunny, to arrive and read a telegram.
Right.
So we got one of these girls. I think it's something Grams. Oh God. Anyway, she arrived at the film set and she confronted William. And she found Costner and read um, this piece of doggerel to him about looking for Maid Marian, which he thought was very funny, and went down. He thought he got the joke. The director, however, he thought the director, who was a great friend of our producer, Sarah Radcliffe, did not think it remotely funny. He was kind of pissed off.
Right.
So there was a rivalry. I remember about a year later talking to him. I think it was an executive at Warner Brothers, and he said, "Well, you got the reviews, but we got the audiences. We made the money. You got the reviews." It was a great cast. We had some. The weather was foul. The money was a little bit tight, but it was a good gallop. And it was a great cast. Maid Marian, of course, was at that time just married Gary Oldham.
Yes, yeah.
They were lurking. I mean, he was lurking in the shadows. He never appeared. I could see him hiding behind watching the action. God. She was, she was. I thought she was. She was very game.
No, I was just going to say, obviously, you mentioned at the start that obviously you were very aware of the adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn, and there's a famous version from the 70s as well with Sean Connery, Robin and Marion. So I guess
I saw that. I thought it was an interesting concept. So I didn't think it was a particularly good film.
No, I think you're right. I agree. I think exactly an interesting concept with a good cast, but perhaps doesn't quite land.
Come off.
But I guess you obviously you were consciously trying to do something different and put a different spin on a character and a story that I guess a lot of us are sort of kind of familiar with to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean certainly it was around the time of the poll tax in England. So John, I mean there is a sort of underlying current of anti-Thatcherism, which is picked up by one or two critics, oddly enough in America, I think. We tried to, without being on the nose, make it relevant to, Thatcher's England and getting the poll tax, and King John arriving saying, "I will have my money." It was subversive but in a very, I hope, subtle and nuanced way. There was a number of academics reviewed the film very positively. I mean, they said a lot, or somebody, I think it was Holt, who wrote the classic book on Robin Hood. Oxford, and I had him as a consultant.
Oh, okay.
He was very helpful in terms of atmosphere, and I think he did say he thought it was the best version of Robin Hood since the Errol Flynn one, which was high praise indeed. But I think building castles and putting them underground was what I gave it a different look.
And I guess did you feel a pressure or a heightened sense of responsibility to really get the film right and make it work?
Absolutely, yes. It was also, I mean, I because of the Errol Flynn version, and also there was there's so many television versions, and so it was such a popular subject. I mean, I think they're planning another. I think at the moment there's another one in pre-production.
Right.
At the moment, I did feel I wanted to make something significant, something that stood alone and was set apart
Hmm.
and attained a standard of storytelling and myth making that was of its own. Yeah,
Hmm.
I, um, I didn't want to do um, I wanted to obviously reference the legend, but at the same time, I wanted to make it fresh. Yeah, bring out some significant, aspects
Hmm.
which hadn't been, alluded to before, but about the Green Man and I mean, when they take the castle at the end, all Fool's Day and all that, it was, it was not all claiming. It was with their masks, and it was, it was. I thought very much in the spirit. I tried to get a bit of a mystery morality plays sort of that atmosphere into it as well.
Hmm.
So it was yeah, but obviously the fencing, the action, um, was important. But I thought keeping a sense of humour about it
Hmm.
was keeping it
Oh, absolutely.
upbeat rather than
Yeah.
was important. Yeah.
And you mentioned obviously sort of the casting a few minutes ago, and I guess that's half the battle, right? In terms of getting the casting right, especially for the lead roles. And as you mentioned, you had the likes of Patrick Bergin and Uma Thurman and Joanne Crabbe, and I guess you were sort of really sort of involved in the main casting as well.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, pretty free hand. I mean, they didn't say you have to have the equivalent of Kevin Costner. Okay, but with the budget, we can. There was no money for that kind of casting anyway.
Right.
Um, so, so I think Susie figures we just sat down and we just got the best actors they could really, yeah. And it was a very happy company. It was, and I had a very good AD, one a real veteran. I remember him saying he was in semi-retirement. He did Champions with me, Bert, and I said, you've got to come. You've got to do one more film. Come and do Robin Hood with me. He said, no, no. But for you, John, maybe I will. But I persuaded him to come back to do one more film. I mean, he was a veteran of, all the sort of 50s, 60s, 70s British films. So brilliant, wonderful AD. And I got him back and he said to me, okay, John, Robin Hood, yep. One condition, only one condition. I said, what is it? He said, catering. None of that fancy French food. We're going to have good old English food. I want pig's trotters, jellied eels. He gave me a menu. If you get canteen and they serve traditional British grub, I'll do it. Okay, that's what we do. So it's sort of bought by a wonderful so, subscribe to a very traditional English menu, and we went down to catering. So it was a happy crew. Let me put it that way.
Well, no, good. And I guess would it be fair to say that sort of Patrick Bergin was a bit of a unknown quantity when he was cast as Robin Hood, because I think 1991 proved to be a real sort of breakout year for him, sort of appearing in two big studio films, Robin Hood and Sleeping with the Enemy, and all of a sudden he was sort of known in the mainstream, I guess.
He did that film. I cast him on the basis of the film he did in Africa.
Oh, okay.
Certainly the one based on the search for the Nile.
Mm.
And I thought he was very impressive in that.
Mm.
And he got the one with Roberts after Robin Hood, I think.
Yes, yeah.
And he got a terrific screen presence.
Mm.
I'm surprised. I mean, maybe it's disagree. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't, really take off actually and become a significant force like Liam Neeson. Or, I thought he had real presence.
Mm.
Um,
Absolutely. No, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, but he was much more. I saw him in Los Angeles about a few years ago, and he was much. He didn't want to talk about acting at all. He was much more interested in in um, in his band, in his music.
Oh, really?
Um, you see, I mean, his brother, Thurman. I mean, he's always assumed that his brother was the actor in the family,
Mm.
and in Ireland, of course, he is a significant name.
Mm.
And maybe it was something to do with his, competing with his brother. I don't know, but anyway, he wanted to make his mark as as a musician. He had a band. He made a couple of recordings. He was talking about his band. When I did another film, I did a film in Ireland about about the Cayley Wars. I mean, it's about brothers, the boys from County Clare,
Right.
boys. And I invited him to bring his band into as a sort of cameo,
Mm.
which he happily did.
Mm.
And he had a cameo in that. But I'm surprised that he didn't. His career didn't, flourish because he had a terrific presence. Even I saw him a few years ago. But anyway, he even he had a guest role on EastEnders.
Yes. Yeah.
And he completely dominated. Never stood a chance against them. He stole every scene. Extraordinary. It's one of those mysteries.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if well, you probably know more than I do, but I guess you mentioned someone like Neeson or even Oldman, and I guess if they're all leading actors and they're up for the same parts, then perhaps there's a couple that get lost in the shuffle, really. But
I'm not sure he had the ambition.
right.
That's what I'm suggesting. His elder brother may have. I don't know. There's something. He didn't have quite the single-mindedness, the drive, the fierceness.
And you mentioned obviously the fact that he was sort of unwell during production, but did you know that sort of going into it, or did he sort of become unwell as you were filming? Oh,
I
right.
think it was very cold and the conditions were pretty raw.
Mm.
But even so, I mean, everybody else got through it pretty well. I mean, and it was. I know he had it before. I mean, he he should have declared it on the insurance. He
Right.
didn't. We had to. I mean, riding, and it was an interesting exercise.
Right. I could imagine. Um, and you mentioned the locations earlier, but I guess, what was it like reliving that time period? Because I know obviously the Errol Flynn version was filmed in California and the Connery version was filmed in Spain, and there's a BBC Robin Hood TV series from about 20 years ago that's filmed in Hungary, but you actually
Right.
filmed in, the English countryside and around the Welsh border, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
There's no forest. No forest left. There's no,
Mm.
um, so finding that kind of a forest which would be representative or look in any way familiar.
Mm.
I mean, to a medieval pair of eyes, it's damn near impossible in England now. But around Cheshire and the Welsh borders, we got the nearest we could get to it, and I felt very keen that we should do it in here,
Mm.
Um, and I also thought, just in terms of casting extras, that look was,
Mm.
I didn't want swarthy, Romanians. I just thought it should be, homebrewed.
And I guess traditionally, sort of the villains of Robin Hood have been, the Sheriff of Nottingham and Guy of Gisborne. But in your film, Jerome Crabbe was the Baron, and Jurgen Prochnow was Sir Miles Falconet.
Yes,
Um,
wonderful.
was there sort of like a specific reason behind that? Was it thought to be the more historically accurate, where you've got the Normans against the Saxons, or was it kind of to
Yeah, I think John and I we decided it was we would celebrate the more democratic
right?
um, um, nature of Anglo-Saxon community as opposed to the dictatorial version of the
Right.
you know land-grabbing um, Normans. So it wasn't quite Ethelred, but it was deliberately set against the sort of uh, Saxon concept of society,
Hmm.
set against uh, a Norman tyranny.
Hmm. Oh, I think
And
that.
you can read that anyway.
One exactly, but no, I think that plays off, obviously really well. And the was the original title for the film Robin Hood, Thief of the Forest, or is that just internet chatter?
I think that's probably there may be some truth in it, but it may have been one of the titles that were suggested before it got to me.
Right. Okay.
Um, I think Sarah and I would never have contemplated that kind of title.
Right.
No,
And did you ever sort of entertain making a sequel? And the reason I asked that is because it feels like if Robin Hood was made today, as soon as it's released, there would be talk of a sequel, how it could be sort of the starting point for its own franchise, or was it very much envisioned as a sort of, one and done kind of standalone Robin Hood film?
it was very much a sort of standalone.
Right.
Um, give Kevin Costner's Warner Brothers version of the film a good kicking if we could.
Right. Right.
Joe Roth, Joe Roth originally had the property and
Yes.
developed it,
Hmm.
and it was and he went on to become head of production
Hmm.
at Fox, and they wouldn't. He couldn't take that project with him. So I mean, it was anyway. The studio that he left decided they were going to go ahead with Costner. It all became. I didn't get involved in that
Right.
in that in that in that mess. I just put my head down. The politics I left to the producers and executives. I just thought, let's make the best picture we can
Sure.
and in the best time possible without compromising or sacrificing
Hmm. Oh no,
you know,
absolutely.
any kind of production values. Yeah. So I wasn't. So for me, it was just playing, you know, Robin Hood against the Normans,
Hmm. Right.
the Norman tyranny,
Hmm.
uh, tax.
Right. And I guess, nowadays in a era of countless superhero films, it feels like Robin Hood is one of Hollywood's more traditional heroes, really, and it's a story that I think audiences still love and enjoy because there are so many films and TV series about it.
Indeed, I mean it's part of it's it seems to be embedded. It's woven into our national
Right.
psyche. I mean it's and particularly I mean it's he at a time um, when there's a sense of oppression and hardness and a sense of being put upon. Any kind of savior like Robin Hood who's going to give two fingers to the establishment
Hmm.
and sort of take care of those that have been oppressed or put down is going to have massive appeal, particularly probably at the moment. When the Sheriff of Nottingham seems to be in the White House.
No, exactly. I think you're right. I think Robin Hood's probably more relevant now than ever
Robin Hood is
before.
extremely wide. They put another
No,
one in pre-production. Yeah.
yeah, no, exactly. And do you remember sort of how the film was? received on release? I know you mentioned earlier about, speaking to someone and they said, you got the reviews and Cosner's version got the money, but it seems, bonkers to believe now that, your film didn't get, a theatrical run in the States. I know it was on television, but, if that happened nowadays, it would seem
There was no
inconceivable, I
deal
think.
with Fox. It was, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I looked at my grandson wants to be a film director, so
Right.
showing some signs of precocious talent.
Hmm.
Anyway, I rarely look at films that I've made. Once we've had the premiere, I I move on,
Right.
and because the film's perfect, and I don't want to look back. Anyway, but I did look at it about a couple of months ago, and I thought, yeah, it would have done really well in the theatres. I mean, I remember we got the theatre had a premiere here in London, and it was rousing. It was, I agree with you. It played almost, I mean, played extremely well for some reason in Spain.
Oh, really?
It ran forever in Spain and made a lot of money in Spain.
Hmm.
Was, well, number one at the box office for months, I think.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
I may be exaggerating, but I know that people kept on it's doing really well in Spain.
Right. Yeah, I know it's funny how these things work, isn't it? I think I'm right in saying it's the Bond film License to Kill when that sort of released, and perhaps that didn't do amazing numbers, but then they were saying, well, it's the number one highest grossing film in Denmark, and it's like so, you know, these things happen, I suppose. And finally for me, I think I guess almost 35 years on now, sort of how do you think Robin Hood has endured? Because I think you've got fans who have loved the film since they first saw it sort of 3 decades ago, and then perhaps there's a younger audience, perhaps more like myself, that's kind of discovered it for the first time in recent years and love it as well.
That's very reassuring. Yeah, yeah. I thought it held up pretty well, actually. There's one scene which um, I would like to reshoot. There's one scene. Well, if you're lucky, there's only one to reshoot, and that was the ropes for the nooses. When they're about to hang, they're hanging, and Robin Hood comes rushing into the rescue, and the ropes are not straight enough. They look too new. They should have been greased down and looked as though they'd been used more often. They should have been bloodstained.
Mm.
That's the only thing that drives me absolutely mad when I see it. It's just a small thing to worry about. But overall, I thought it was immensely enjoyable, actually.
Mm.
And it did feel, as which was my intention, was to give a fresher, a sort of more not authentic. It's a word, I hate that word. More honest, I think, version of Robin Hood in terms of the Middle Ages. Holt was very interesting. I said, what do you think, of the character of all these, people? He said, go back to the popular plays of Shakespeare. He said, it's all there. I mean, Shakespeare has actually late Middle Ages, the humour and the character. But I think we were closer to Chaucer in some ways. That's all. I was just, thinking and talking about the humour and how robust and how meaty it should be. And the sense of superstition and magic and play acting. I mean, the fool sitting at the end. So things like not little things like which I'd forgotten about, which reassure me that I wasn't, that I wasn't being done.
No, no, exactly. I think Robin Hood's one of those things where if it's done, if it slightly goes the wrong way, it's in danger of being a bit pantomimey, and pantomime's not without entertainment. But I think that's why sort of your film does stand out. I think because it does feel that little bit more, realistic, and I think that's the one. Speaking for myself, that's the reason why I think why when there is so many Robin Hood films and shows to kind of watch and revisit, that's kind of the one that I go back to because it does stand
That's
out.
very,
Yeah.
that's very reassuring. Reassuring. The other thing is, that, of course, one of the critics made a point, which is how very I mean, well, wasn't really um, wise, or I mean, was it reckless to imagine that um, that Uma could ever be mistaken for a boy? But given that she did do most of the film dressed as a boy, I thought it was she was very. I thought it was quite convincing. Actually, I thought it was a lot of fun.
Mm.
And it was it wasn't pandering to any sort of feminist film. It was just you know, a good idea.